Hello there, family. This is Rob Bell, and you are watching Getting the Record Straight. This is our Truth to Power segment. We talk about politics, social justice, issues around the world that are global issues and local that are affecting people of color, African Americans in particular. Welcome. It is Friday the 17th, I believe, and 17th of April. Please stay safe. I hope you are. I had to get out today, but had my mask, homemade mask, and gloves, disposable gloves. So I'm trying to do the right thing. I hope you are too. Please subscribe. If you're watching this, take time to subscribe. There should be a button for you to click on. We're moving up, getting up there, and really appreciate your support. Of course, we do a video that's devoted to music called Black Rock and Soul Review, and hope you're watching that. Got some great music on the website, actually on the YouTube, on my YouTube channel, Black Rock and Soul. But you get there through the web. I mean, the easiest way to get there anyway is through the website, as it is to get here. Getting the record straight. Again, subscribe. I want to start talking first of all about some local issues. My pastor at Mother Bethel, Brother Mark Taylor, who's a wonderful pastor, reverend, and he wrote a great article in the Philadelphia. Where was that? I believe it was the Tribune, where he was talking about how the city, in particular Mayor Kinney, had responded to a recent murder that had taken place, I believe, in North Philly, and how he was calling out the DA, Larry Krasner, who is also a member of Mother Bethel, by the way, a DA who's been doing a great job, and who, like many of us, doesn't believe that by brutalizing people, by taking the law into your own hands and criminalizing law enforcement, that in fact you are preventing crime. We know that's not true. And one of the things that Reverend Tyler emphasized in his article was that there are programs, there are initiatives that over the years have worked, have had an impact on reducing crime, particularly in many of our impoverished neighborhoods. And we have to remember Philadelphia is one of the poorest, if not the poorest city in the country, major city anyway. But anyway, Reverend Tyler was stating that, if we took the long view and invested in the schools and in some of these intervention programs that have shown promise and have impacted any number of young people, we would have much better results. And I agree with him wholeheartedly. In fact, and then, in the context of this coronavirus situation, the jail situation and prison becomes even more important and significant because people being in those closed quarters, the possibility of contracting the virus is enhanced a great deal. So, I applaud Reverend Tyler for the article. It's a very good article, and we really need to think of that in terms of programming and strategic thinking going forward in our big cities. Indeed, with reference to the virus, I was looking and I saw an article that San Francisco was sending 40% of its jailed inmates home, and that the left-leaning district attorney there by the name of Bodine, Chesa Bodine, says that they were going to reduce the jail population by almost 40%. Also in Chicago, there's an executive director of a program called Uptown People's Law Center. Again, in Chicago, Alan Mills, who's the executive director there, said that you can safely release up to 75% of the 2 million incarcerated people, particularly those who have been incarcerated for nonviolent crimes, that you could do that safely. In Philly now, about last I looked, I think this article was from maybe 2 weeks ago, that 200 people had been released from Philly jails. Governor Wolf has stated that he will grant temporary reprieves to nonviolent inmates, which could possibly impact 1,800 prisoners right now. I don't know whether that's going into effect. If anyone knows, you could certainly put a comment um, on this page. So that's what's going on. I don't know how much of that's been reported in mainstream media. I know I haven't seen much in terms of the jails and prison population, but I know that that is a problem. Um, but in light, I mean, despite that, the United States obviously is going through a great deal of changes. And as one would anticipate, certainly with this president, with this Congress, and particularly the Republican Congress, they're trying to shift the blame. Of course, the United States leads the world now in contracted cases of the virus, as well as deaths, I believe. And Trump and his henchmen are trying to shift the blame, and it's expected and anticipated. What is bothersome though is just how many people from not just Republicans, but are kind of buying into what I call the China syndrome right now. Everybody's kind of blaming China for overlook not becoming being fully transparent when the virus broke out, and that there have been some accusations that the virus was actually developed in what is the Wuhan laboratory, a Wuhan laboratory. We don't know if any of this is, how much of this or if any of it is actually true. I've read different accounts of what happened. We don't even know, although the epicenter originally was Wuhan, but we don't know how the virus may have gotten there. Whether someone brought it there by accidentally or intentionally. But what I find frustrating is that just how easily many on both sides of the aisle, if you will, Republican and Democrat, want to digest the Kool-Aid, if you will. This notion that the United States is running around the world providing, relief and support, and as altruistic reasons for doing so is ridiculous. I mean, right now, while the world has kind of come together, many parts of it, to try to deal with this virus, the United States has had sanctions on various countries that have done nothing to it whatsoever. Venezuela being the primary example. In fact, the United States sent two warships down there, supposedly to intercept drug dealers and drug trafficking, and that's been pretty much refuted. And again, while other people are really trying to deal with this pandemic, the wars are still going on in the Middle East and Iraq and Syria. And as I said, we've got all these accusations being made with China. As a matter of fact, also, it seems like there's a great deal I've found on Facebook and a lot of postings about China and Africa right now. And I'm not saying that China doesn't have problems and issues and even racism. But how does the United States, how do where do we get off being critical of anyone, particularly in terms of their dealings in Africa and with Africa? I mean, I don't know how many, I should have looked that up, how many countries are in the motherland and how many wars for independence there were. I do know this, though. The United States has never supported any of them, including South Africa. You name it, we were pro-colonialism, pro-imperialism, and always against freedom and independence. Always, 100% of the time in Africa. And so, it's impossible for us to be pointing the finger at someone when we have a log in our own eye. But anyway, this China thing has really been put out there by Steve Bannon and Frank Gaffney, who are both conservative. They're not conservative; they're fascist. That term "conservative" we need to rethink a little bit. But right-wing, fascist, neo-fascist operators. Of course, Bannon you've heard of. He was really an integral part of Trump's election campaign. And he is a white supremacist. There's no getting around that, as is this guy Frank Gaffney, and the two of them have been perpetrating this notion that China, intentionally or as deliberately put this virus out there. Gaffney, of course, is the author of a book called Sharia, Threat to America. And he was the one who was running around talking about that Obama was secretly a Muslim. But both of these guys have been behind this China syndrome thing. And I even was watching, I told you I like this show, The Rising. And even that group, which is, really, I think does a good job in terms of its investigation and really putting forth and presenting a hard, principled look at various issues and policies. They basically were adopting this line that, it's conclusive that China was responsible for covering up the virus and letting the pandemic, spread without letting people know. And there's just no proof of that, or very little. And what they do cite is coming from United States intelligence agencies. What could be wrong with that? How often have they lied to the people and the world about secret intelligence that they have? In fact, I just wanted to get back to comment on that the intelligence community has been saying that the White House launched, or rather, the Daily Beast, which is another investigative group online, stated that the White House launched a communications plan across multiple agencies that focuses on accusing Beijing of orchestrating a cover-up and creating a global pandemic. It claims Beijing hid news of the virus from its own people for weeks while suppressing info and punishing reporters and journalists who raised the alarm. And, I think this is something that came out of the intelligence community. There isn't any supporting documents for that, and they're just putting it out there, of course, one, to get the blame off of themselves, and secondly, to really attack China from a propaganda standpoint. I don't have much time, but I will pick that up again on our next show. This has been Getting the Record Straight, and I'm Rob Bell.